Hi, babe. Welcome to the Horror Babe Show. I'm your host, Chelsea Beller. Welcome to FilmQuest Filmmaker Friday. First up on FFF is a frightening friendly filmmaker, Colin G. Cooper, the talented director and editor behind Bath Bomb. Listen in as Colin and I talk Giallo, queer horror, and his horror inspo. Heads up, you might hear some ambient sounds since we did record in a public place. Let's tune in to my conversation with Colin. Hi, babe. Welcome to the Horror Babe Show. Today we are at FilmQuest, and today I have Colin G. Cooper with me. Colin, hi.
Hello.
I have a few questions for you. Colin's short, Bath Bomb, has been traveling the world. He was just telling me it's been 17 countries. Is that what you said? Or 11 countries? Something like that. Yeah. That's wild, and congratulations on that. That's incredible. Is there a feature in the works?
Yeah, the point of the short actually was to be a proof of concept for a feature. Mm-hmm. We tried to get a feature off the ground initially without doing a short, but because it's a very niche subject, it's a throwback to an old genre, Giallo. Mm-hmm. And surprisingly, people who make money decisions, even at film companies, weren't super clear on what that was. Sure. And then trying to say that, and it's also we're trying to reposition Giallo to be queer. That was even more confusing. Sure. So we made a short that is not related in terms of the plot, but establishes the style and the tone and kind of what queer Giallo would look like. That was the point of it. And then, happily, the feature version of it has been picked up for funded development by a company called Rabbit's Black. They're a kind of new company, but the first movie that they financed was LongLegs. So they're
You're kidding.
Pretty right now, doing pretty well.
That's incredible. What, Black Rabbit? What did you say?
Rabbit's Black is the name of the company. They're like they're not just a film company. They had a bunch of other things that they were already doing. They actually invest in a lot of random things. They own some European football teams and do some live music related stuff. They own a brand of cactus water. They do a bunch of stuff. This is their first. They only recently got into film, and somehow, as their first feature that was released, landed like the most successful horror movie of the year, which is pretty good for them.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Congratulations on that. So that's in the works, but I'm sure you don't have a time frame yet, or do you have a...
We kind of do. Just, whenever there's money involved, time is important.
Yes.
So the idea is that we'll agree upon a date that we're going to pump the brakes on the festival run, which tentatively looks like we're playing at Blood in the Snow in Toronto, which is in later November. Yeah. So we'll probably choose that just because conveniently I'll be back in Toronto, which is where I'm based. Mm. And then, the aim would be to try to start pre-production, so have, not just a draft, but shooting script ready by late next year, maybe around this time, like November-ish of next year, ideally.
Cool. You actually mentioned this already, so I'm glad you did. I would love to know more about, I'm going to pronounce it right, Giallo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it just means yellow in Italian.
Oh, okay.
Not pronounced better. I'm not going to do the right pronunciation. But,
Giallo.
Yeah, Giallo. I think that's how you say it. It was like late 60s, early 70s was kind of its heyday. Mm-hmm. Westerners mostly know Dario Argento as he was kind of the biggest figure, and he didn't create it, but he was the biggest figure in the genre.
Okay.
And there was a lot of I found it in film school. We did like there was an auteur cinema class at the school that I went to. I went to film school in a university environment, not in like a individual, like a separate film school environment.
Right.
And they had this auteur cinema class that each year that they did it, it was 2 filmmakers that you could argue are auteurs, and you would watch, a selection of their films and learn about auteur theory. And the year that I was there, or the year that I was there in the correct year to have that class, it was Cronenberg and Argento. And that was the first time that I saw Giallo films. We watched movies. There's a movie, Deep Red, and a movie Tenebrae, that are both Argento movies. Those are the first 2 we watched of his. And I, on my own, watched a bunch more that were not Argento films, and noticed that almost all of them had queer characters, and not just in like a throwaway side role. They were always pivotal to the plot. Sometimes, they were never the protagonist, but always important to the protagonist, or they were the villain. But they were still stereotyped and, not presented particularly well.
Yeah.
And at that time, even, I had thought of it would be cool to kind of reclaim this for queer people.
Yeah.
And people oftentimes members of marginalized communities, when they try to reclaim or co-opt an existing genre, they will just take the same type of protagonist and just make them queer, or make them black, or make them a woman, or whatever, which I'm not a fan of, because I don't think it really pushes anything forward. It doesn't show you the experience of being an outsider, because you're just positioning every marginalized person as a typical hero, which we aren't.
Yeah.
So instead, I wanted to take like a stereotyped queer role in those movies, and instead pivot the narrative to be told from that person's perspective. Like a side character is now the center of the story, and the role that would typically be the protagonist is still there. They're just not who you're seeing the film through.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my intention for a long time. I'm not young, so film school was a long time ago. And I just never had an opportunity to do it until recently.
That's amazing. I love that you're pushing that narrative. That's really incredible, because we really need more of that, obviously.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Did you write this short, or did you help write it, or?
This is actually a cool FilmQuest tie-in. This screening is actually super cool for us, because I came here in 2021. They have this event called Filmmaker Speed Dating, where you have I think it's 3 minutes, maybe less, to pitch something or introduce yourself to a filmmaker, and then you swap seats and you do it again. And
that is so fun.
It's crazy, because it is every filmmaker at the festival does it. And I met a queer screenwriter, Michael Clifton, he's from New York, but he's based in Mexico City now. And we hit it off. And after the festival was over, I asked him, to send me any unproduced shorts that he had written. And he sent me the ones that I think he really wanted to make first. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't mentioned to him that I was kind of looking for something that either already felt like Giallo, or something that had imagery or something in it that I could push into a Giallo direction.
Yeah.
And none of the shorts that he sent me felt that way. And then kind of offhand he said, and I have this folder of 1-page shorts that he had written for 1-page short competitions, 1-minute screenplays. Yeah. And he sent me those, and the very the basis, the smallest version of what Bath Bomb is, was there as a 1-page thing. And there was just a couple things in it where I was this could be pushed in that direction. So then between him and I then expanded it together into the short's 10 minutes, but it's if you take out the end credits, it's 7.5. So we did that together. He's wrote the actual screenplay, though. He's the screenwriter. We expanded the story together just through conversation and email.
Yeah.
And then he's the one who actually wrote it.
I love that, because I love this story. I don't want to give anything away, because I want people to watch it at some point.
Yeah.
But I loved the imagery. I loved the way it was shot. I loved the way it was lit. It was lit very beautifully, and I saw there were lamps and candles and everywhere, and I was that's my dream space, honestly. I don't know if you would be able to answer this question, but do you know what inspired this story what was his name? Michael. Do you know what inspired this story for him, or?
I'm not sure what has inspired the original story idea for him. When we started expanding it together, we talked about that a bit. For me, it was the conflict going on is a pretty, it's not that unique. Just the basis of the conflict itself, just wanting to get revenge on somebody who's cheated on you.
Sure.
And it was easy to pull from personal experience. One of the reasons that I was drawn to it is that actually I can't say this part because it's a huge spoiler.
Oh no.
So, there's a thing in it that is obvious and different, and it's not only did we use it as something that would visually be immediately noticeable and shocking, but it's based on somebody, a dude that I had dated.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
Knowing what I know.
Yeah.
Just in general, who are your horror filmmaker inspirations? Do you have any? I mean, I guess you mentioned Giallo and Argento, but...
Yeah, kind of all the Giallo people. Mario Bava is kind of like the coolest.
Okay.
He made what people would say are the actual first Giallo films.
Got it.
And they've still had they continue to have a pretty massive impact. He made this... He had already made what is considered the first feature-length Giallo, but he then made an anthology feature. One of the shorts in the anthology is called The Telephone. So Giallo in general is the precursor to slasher. The entire visual language of slasher comes from Giallo, like seen from the killer's POV as they chasing after somebody in the forest and kills them.
And
the putting on the black gloves and inserts and knives, pulling out a knife and an insert, all that stuff. It all comes from Giallo.
Interesting.
Giallo just had kind of a more campy and flamboyant element to it, and it usually dealt with adults who were affluent. It wasn't like teens or kids or whatever.
Right.
And there was no slasher. Like what slasher did is it's about the slasher. Like you go to see Friday the 13th because Jason, not because of the protagonist, and they're the star of the franchise. In Giallo, the killer is always a normal person, and they're part of your social circle, and it's a murder mystery. You're trying to figure out who it is.
Right.
So some would argue that Scream, for instance, is actually more Giallo than it is slasher.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In this short that The Telephone that Mario Bava did in 1963, the plot of it is an attractive young woman alone at night in her home getting threatening phone calls from somebody saying that they're going to kill her. There's the moment where the caller reveals that he can see her at that moment, which is the first time that existed in film. And in the ending you find out that the caller is one of her friends disguising their voice. So it's literally the idea for Scream.
Yeah, that literally
in
is.
1963.
Oh my god.
So he's like a big one. Argento's a big influence. And then currently my biggest influences are... There's like a wave of European women who are doing very Cronenberg-esque body horror that are my favorite. The two most prominent being Coralie Farjat, who did The Substance, and then Julia Ducournau, who did Raw and Titan. But there are others that are doing it as well that are also very cool.
It's amazing. Was this a lifelong dream of yours to become a horror director?
I think it was without me knowing it, because it wasn't explicitly, and then it feels obvious now. I went to film school, originally aimed to be an editor, was an editor for a while, then kind of went off in other directions. I worked for a metal and punk festival in Vegas for 6 years, and I've done a bunch of stuff, but I was always still tied to film. I directed music videos at the same time that I was doing that festival, and I've edited, not great reality television for, mostly because it pays well. So that was always like something that I've done at least one contract a year just to, make money.
Yeah.
But I've been obsessed with horror forever, and there's a huge intersection between horror and metal. So that was a natural draw for me. But yeah, when we shot Bath Bomb, even just the process of being on set, which is often a very stressful process, and in my music video life was an incredibly stressful process, especially when there's a label attached. But for Bath Bomb, it was like it was the best, if you want to consider it work, easily the best working experience I've ever had, and like one of the happiest. The 3 days, we had a pre-light day and then 2 shoot days. Those 3 days were like some of the happiest I've ever been. Which is, if you can say
wonderful.
that about your work, if doing something for a living, you're pretty lucky.
Absolutely. You edited this piece too.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like? What was it like to edit a piece you directed? Like, did you have regrets, I guess, when you were doing the editing process?
No.
Good.
And I think that the fact that I was, that I had an editing background, you can be way more economical if you're an editor and you understand just the way screen language works. You understand what shots are actually going to cut better with what shots. There is nothing other than alternate takes, where the performance isn't the version of the performance I wanted. There are no unused shots. I only shot what I would put in because I knew what the edit was in my head.
Yeah.
There's a huge benefit to being an editor first before you're a director. I was an editor for a decade before I was a director, so it's very helpful.
Yeah.
And also, I know that was a big part in getting some of the collaborators we had. Our cinematographer is Jeremy Getting is actually quite a notable cinematographer. He shot all 6 seasons of The Expanse. He shot for The Boys. He shot Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities.
Wow.
And that was like a cold pitch. I didn't know him, but we found his contact information through mutual connections.
That's great.
And I didn't know at the time that he agreed to do the project, but later there's in Movie Maker magazine, there's an article on the project, and when they asked him about it for a quote in the thing, one of the things he said when they asked him why he felt confident to jump on the project, because this is my first short, and he's very experienced, and he had mentioned, in addition to some other things, that he knew that I was an editor, and from explaining what I wanted shot-wise when we first discussed it, he realized that I understood what the edit was before, so we weren't going to be wasting time and things, which was important to him for coming on the project.
That's amazing. So that was a real benefit to you, and you didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you have other projects lined up? Do you have other shorts?
So Bath Bomb is like step 1 of an obnoxiously large kind of cinematic universe that I want to do of queer Giallo projects.
Yeah.
So the first feature, is one of ideally 3 features that we would do. Okay. But then I also have a limited streaming series that I want to do that is still queer, but it's based on the other marginalized community that is ubiquitous in Giallo, but always positioned poorly, which is sex workers.
Oh, yes.
So I have done sex work in the past. I have a lot of sex worker friends, and I want to do like a streaming series that I don't want to say anything about in case someone steals my idea. But it would be anthology style, so not a tied together narrative, similar to like Cabinet of Curiosities, and where each story is its own,
right?
But it would all be told through the perspective of a different sex worker, and I want to show the broad variety of jobs that are considered sex work,
right?
And ideally, I would showrun that, but I would want at least the writer's room to be majority sex workers, and ideally, if possible, also have sex workers behind the camera as well. But I've had some initial conversations with them. The only trouble that you run into is there is some sex workers. There's a large portion of sex workers actually who aren't really they're reluctant to have their identities out there.
Right.
So we'll see how much we can fulfill the dream of having sex workers writing and directing the projects if possible.
That would be
That'd be awesome.
It would be amazing. Like, I can't think of something that has sex work in like an actually good light.
Right.
You know? That's wonderful. I'm so excited for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Handshake. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been
Yeah.
wonderful, and I can't wait to watch Bath Bomb again because it's that good.
Okay.
You've been watching The Horror Babe Show with Colin G. Cooper. Check out Bath Bomb if you can when it becomes public. Yeah. Bye, babe. Well, that's it from me and Colin. Hope you enjoyed this week's FilmQuest Filmmaker Friday. Tune in every Friday for a new filmmaker interview with me. Please don't forget to like, comment, follow, and subscribe. Also, you can follow Colin G. Cooper on his Instagram at Colin G. Cooper and Bath Bomb Horror. Bye, babe.